UFOs. Here's my panel. Nick Pope, the former head of the British Defense Ministry's UFO investigative unit. Fife Symington III, the former Arizona governor, who claims he saw a UFO. James Fox, filmmaker and UFO investigator. I didn't know there was such a thing, a UFO investigator. And Leslie Kean, author of UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record. Okay, so I was asking you before, Leslie, the U.S. Air Force once had an official UFO investigative unit called Project Blue Book. Tell us about that.
That's correct. That was set up in the early 50s, and it lasted until early 1970, actually. They shut it down, and hundreds of reports were called in, and they became eventually overwhelmed with all the work that they had to do, got tired of the whole business. They issued a lot of phony explanations for cases, and it just was very hard for them to manage it. Eventually, people just didn't take Blue Book very seriously, actually. But it was good that there was this official agency. There was a place for people to go and for pilots to go when they had these events happen to them.
But it does make a difference. Was it there to prove or disprove? You know,
it was there to actually try to determine what they were, to learn more about them, and to decide if there's any national security implications.
You think we need it again?
I absolutely do. I don't think we need at all the kind of agency we had then, because there were a lot of mistakes and nobody wants to see those repeated. But we do need an official office, even just one staff person, who can be a focal point for investigations in the United States. So when something happens like it did at O'Hare Airport, we have somebody that can go out and do a proper investigation very quickly and have access to all the data. Civilian groups can't get access to data. That's the problem.
So, Nick, you claim that the U.S. and U.K. thwarted an effort for the UN to investigate UFOs. Why do you claim that?
Well, in some of the documents recently released by the Ministry of Defense, which is in the middle of a 4-year program to declassify and release all its UFO files, it was shown that there was a United Nations initiative to look into the whole UFO issue. But both the British government and the American government took the view that we didn't want this to go ahead. You know, the Americans in particular had taken the view, look, given that we terminated Project Blue Book, it would make our decision to withdraw from UFO investigations look wrong if the United Nations suddenly started taking an interest. So behind the scenes, there were efforts to really bring the whole thing into disrepute and make sure it never happened. And it's kind of easy to do. You can use phrases like little green men and flying saucers to sort of faintly ridicule the subject.
Yeah,
but like I say, behind the...
To get people not to take it seriously, they do things like that. Oh, little aliens and people with big eyes and big heads. Fife, I think it's fascinating. Yeah. I think it's fascinating that you're a former governor. Do you believe, as a former government official, that the government and the military are trying to cover up UFOs? There's an they're actively trying to cover it up.
Well, I mean, I don't have factual knowledge to say yes. But my personal experience was that they, threw out all kinds of explanations for the Lights Over Phoenix event. Primarily the one about the Warthogs, the A-10 tank-killing aircraft that were practicing in the Goldwater range, and they used that as an explanation. And when we checked that out, those aircraft were coming back to home base between 10 and 10:30. And the event that we all experienced happened between 8 and 8:30, so I know for sure that wasn't true.
Well, here's the thing.
So,
how does it behoove the government? I mean, why would the government want to cover up a UFO sighting or incident?
Well, sometimes people just don't have answers, and they're embarrassed by the fact that they don't have an answer. Actually, if you think about it, technologically, this type of sighting, an event, means that our technology is really inferior, that we've got something cruising through our airspace that nobody understands and really has a hard time comprehending. So they feel pretty insecure about it, I'll bet.
Leslie's here shaking her head. Why are you shaking your head?
Yeah, I would agree with Fife. I mean, I think that, no government, certainly the U.S. government, I have to say, because other governments have acknowledged UFOs, but our government does not seem to want to acknowledge that there's something in the sky they have no control over. It's huge. We don't know when it's going to come and go. We don't know why it's here. I just don't think that's something that a government wants to acknowledge to people.
Nick, is this national security we're talking here?
I think the better...
Yes. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's something in your airspace, you need to know what it is. And no government can really go public and say, there are things in our skies, we don't know what they are. Pilots chase them sometimes, but can't catch them. There are near misses between these things and commercial aircraft, which has happened on numerous occasions. You know, an admission that, well, it would be an admission that we'd lost control of our own airspace, and that's untenable for any government.
James, go ahead.
The question, well, I was just going to say, the question is, what's in it for the government to disclose that that nature of information? I remember when Leslie and I were in France interviewing General Denis Letty of the French Air Force, he said there's just no way that any governing body would admit there are things in our airspace that we don't have control over. They can fly rings around our fastest jets. It's just, there's just no way they're going to admit that.
Leslie, I'm going to...
I mean, how would they benefit from admitting that?
Well, that was my question. How would they benefit from admitting it or not admitting it? Why would, how would it behoove them to cover it up?
I think the only benefit, I mean, there is a benefit in that, excuse me, so many people have seen them, and when you have hundreds and hundreds of citizens of the United States witnessing something.
And someone who works for an airport and air traffic saying,
exactly.
I'm not drunk, I'm not high.
Exactly. These are patriotic people. They've experienced something that is a safety hazard. And to just be told that it's weather, I mean, you know, after a while, the accumulation of insult that it provides people, people really want to know something about what these things are. And I personally think and it has happened in other governments. I know Nick said it's difficult for governments, but certainly some of the South American governments, the Belgian government, have actually made statements when there are sightings that have acknowledged that the sightings have taken place and we cannot tell you what they are. It doesn't cause any kind of major disaster in the society. So. And
there's a reason why you have, you know, the X-Files and all those other things. Stand by real quickly. And why you have all these other shows that are about UFOs that are so popular.
Exactly. When the government won't talk about it, people create a lot of conspiracy and fantasies around it, too.
Okay. More, and we come right back. Don't go anywhere. We're back now talking about what else? UFOs. So, James, you can go on Google Earth, you can find your house, you can find just about anything you want. Why can't we find these UFOs?
Well, we actually have found, we have captured very, very high-res photographic and radar evidence from around the world, landing case traces. And I just ask people to sort of suspend judgment and review the evidence and make their own determination as to what's going on.
What about alien abductions and crop circles? You've looked into that. What did you find? To Nick.
Well, yes, you can't run a UFO project without getting all sorts of other weird and wonderful things reported. We didn't really look in huge detail at alien abductions and crop circles, but we got some fascinating material. I think most crop circles are made by people, but they're certainly fun to look at.
You agree with that, Leslie?
I'm not an expert on crop circles. I mean, as far as I know, there are some that really show anomalous characteristics, but yeah, there's certainly a lot of them that are made by people.
If you look up, you know, aliens or UFOs or whatever, just go to Google or YouTube. Or there's an explosion of people who are interested in this.
Absolutely, and the problem is that most of the material that you're going to find from a Google search is not going to be useful. I mean, there are so many hundreds of faked UFO photos and faked videos on YouTube. I warn people to be aware of that. So many websites that just rely on kind of sensationalistic information that's not factually really accurate. And, you know, I'm only interested in the absolute solid facts that can be corroborated, that come from official sources. And I think those are what we have to focus on when we're concerned about UFOs.
So, Nick, what do you think? They found what they believe to be water on Mars, which is an indication of life. Do you think this proves anything?
I think we're edging that way. Last year, the Royal Society had 2 discussion meetings to talk about the implications for science and society of discovering extraterrestrial life. I think it's only a matter of time before there is some breakthrough discovery. And that's why people are so interested in this subject, because it's one of the most profound questions you can ask. Are we alone or not?
I'm going to ask you the same question, the Mars question.
Yeah, no, I agree with Nick's point of view. I think that as time goes on and we reach further out into space and our technologies develop and become more advanced, inevitably we will find life out there in the universe, and it's going to be and we may even have come across it already and not recognized it. That was sort of Arthur Clarke's theme in many of his books. But I believe that that's the first step, finding water on Mars.
Yeah, so the consensus here is that we are not alone, it appears.
Well, it looks like we may not be. Let's hope we're not.
All right. Thanks to all of my guests. I really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Secret Access UFOs on the Record premieres Thursday at 8 p.m. on History. Thanks for watching, everyone. Good night.